You do not open your eyes. You have no eyelids to open. There's only a sudden, jarring shift from the warm, viscous fluid of non-existence to the cold, crushing pressure of reality. The world is a murky, red-tinged darkness, a prison of flesh. You are suspended in a buoyant tomb, aware of only two things: the rhythmic, muffled thunder of a colossal heart somewhere outside your personal abyss, and a deep, primal, soul-consuming hunger that is so profound it feels like a law of physics. This is your birth, though the word is far too gentle for the occasion. It is an eviction. You are a twitching, writhing bundle of cartilage and appetite, and you are not alone in here. You can sense the others, the faint electrical hum of their nascent nervous systems, the slick slide of their bodies against yours. They are your siblings, and your first meal. Consciousness returns to nature's most egregious overcompensation. Official designation: Carcarocles Megalodon. But you will be known to a future world of shrieking, hairless apes simply as the Megalodon, a name that will become synonymous with monster, which is a deeply unsubtle and rather unimaginative way of saying a thing that is very, very big. And as we are about to see, being very, very big is not a privilege. It is a curse, a slow, grinding, multi-million-year-long biological joke, and you are the punchline. Right now, though, you have no time for existential dread. You have work to do. The hunger, that magnificent, driving force, commands you. You twist your body, a miniature torpedo of purpose, and your jaws, already lined with rows of perfectly formed, needle-sharp teeth, find their first purchase. It is one of your smaller, less developed womb mates. There is no malice in the act, no rivalry. It is simply consumption, an equation being solved. You need energy to exist, and here is energy. The others follow your lead. The soft, quiet nursery of the womb becomes a frantic, churning abattoir. This is intrauterine cannibalism, a wonderfully grotesque strategy that ensures only the strongest, most ruthlessly efficient eating machines are born. You are, it turns out, an exceptionally efficient eating machine. Your first victory in life is fratricide. Your prize is a few more precious calories and the right to be born at all. It will be the most straightforward victory you will ever have. Eventually, the moment comes. You are expelled from the warmth and thrust into the cold, vast, terrifying emptiness of the Miocene Ocean. You are now roughly the size of a modern great white shark, a 10-foot infant in a world where everything is built on a larger, more brutal scale. Your mother, a creature the size of a freight train, gives you not a loving nudge, but an indifferent swish of her tail that nearly sends you spiraling into the abyss. She feels nothing for you. You are a competitor she has just unleashed upon the world. Her parting gift is the silent, urgent message to get as far away from her as possible, because if she gets hungry enough, her maternal instincts will be no match for her metabolism. So you swim. You swim with the frantic, desperate energy of the truly damned. This is your life now, a continuous, panicked flight from things that want to eat you. And in your youth, the list of things that want to eat you is depressingly long. There are other, larger sharks, primitive toothed whales with heads like battering rams and jaws that could snap you in half. The ocean is not a majestic kingdom. It is a dark, sprawling metropolis full of bigger, stronger thugs who see you as an easy mark. You instinctively seek the relative safety of shallower coastal waters, the so-called nurseries. But this is no sanctuary. It's just a different kind of prison. The water is warmer, yes, but it is also murkier, claustrophobic. The neighbors are just as unpleasant. This is where you must spend your awkward teenage years, a clumsy, vulnerable predator trying to learn your trade before your trade gets you killed. Your survival strategy is pathetic in its simplicity. Eat and grow. That's it. There is no clever camouflage, no dazzling turn of speed, no cooperative pack hunting. Your entire evolutionary blueprint is based on the hope that you can cram enough smaller creatures into your mouth to become bigger than the creatures trying to cram you into theirs. Your life plan is the biological equivalent of a failing tech startup's motto: get too big to fail. The problem is that in the open market of the ocean, failure doesn't result in a sternly worded letter from your investors. It results in you being bifurcated. Your first hunts are a masterclass in incompetence. You are a 10-foot shark with the brain of a walnut and the grace of a falling anvil. You see a proto-dugong, a slow, blubbery sack of meat that looks like an easy meal. You charge, propelled by that all-consuming hunger. You misjudge the distance, opening your jaws too early, scooping up nothing but a gallon of salt water that scrapes painfully over your gills. The dugong, barely noticing your pathetic attempt on its life, floats away, leaving you embarrassed and still starving. You try again, this time on a school of fish. You lunge into their midst, a whirlwind of misplaced aggression, thrashing and snapping at empty water as the shimmering cloud parts effortlessly around you. You are a weapon of mass destruction that can't hit the broadside of a barnacle. Each failure is more than just a missed meal. It is a deficit in your energy budget, a delay in your growth, and an open invitation to your own predators. While you are busy fumbling your attack on a turtle, a larger, more experienced shark is silently sizing you up from the gloom. You are learning a very hard, very simple lesson. In this world, there is no prize for second place. There is only the hunter and the hunted. For now, you are uncomfortably in both categories. But you are a Megalodon. Your one and only talent is relentless, stubborn survival. Slowly, agonizingly, you get better. You learn to ambush from below, using the darkness of the depths to hide your approach. You learn to target the weak, the old, the young. You learn that the most effective hunting technique is a single, devastatingly powerful strike that incapacitates your prey before it even knows you are there. Your clumsy lunges become calculated, brutal assaults. You stop chasing schools of fish and start hunting the things that hunt them. You are no longer just surviving. You are learning to dominate. You grow and grow. The feet pile on. With each foot of length, your list of potential predators shrinks, and your list of potential prey expands. You leave the cramped, dangerous nursery of the coast and venture into the open ocean. You are entering a new weight class. You are no longer the nervous teenager. You are the hulking, silent terror of the high seas. You see a whale, one of the smaller baleen species that once would have sent you fleeing into the kelp forests. You no longer see a threat. You see a challenge. You see lunch. The hunt is a masterpiece of prehistoric violence. You shadow it for miles, a living torpedo of dark gray muscle. You wait for the perfect moment, when it surfaces for air, vulnerable and exposed. Then you strike. Not with the fumbling uncertainty of your youth, but with the cold, hard-won confidence of a seasoned killer. You rocket up from the depths, a 50,000-pound missile of teeth and cartilage. Your jaws, now wide enough to swallow a small boat, clamp down on a flipper, crushing bone and tendon. The whale thrashes, but it is already over. You are a force of nature, an act of God, a living extinction event. You have arrived. You are now at the peak, the absolute, undisputed apex. You are 60 feet long, you weigh more than 50 tons. Your 300 serrated teeth are the size of a man's hand, arranged in 5 cascading rows. Your bite force can crush the skull of a sperm whale. You are the largest and most powerful predator in the history of the planet. Nothing hunts you. The ocean, once your personal house of horrors, is now your private kingdom. Life, for the first time, seems stable, predictable, almost easy. And that is precisely when the universe decides to remind you that it has a truly wicked sense of humor. Your new problem, the ironic twist in the tale of your success, is that survival is no longer the issue. The new, all-consuming misery of your existence is administration. The sheer, grinding, tedious bureaucracy of being the king. Your days are now consumed by 2 soul-crushingly awful tasks: mating and territorial defense. Let's start with mating. You thought fighting a whale for your dinner was tough. Try courting a female Megalodon. She is, inevitably, larger than you, more aggressive than you, and is operating on a razor's edge between procreation and predation. There is no romance, no tender courtship ritual. The process is a violent, terrifying negotiation that involves a great deal of biting. You have to clamp onto her pectoral fin with your jaws, holding on for dear life as she thrashes and tries to dislodge you, all while you attempt the delicate biological transaction required to pass on your genes. Success means you father the next generation of oceanic nightmares. Failure means she decides you'd make a better appetizer than a mate, and tears you to pieces. Your reward for reaching the top of the food chain is the privilege of participating in the most dangerous, high-stakes dating scene in the history of the world. Then there is the territory. You are the king, but your kingdom is vast, empty, and full of usurpers. You spend your days endlessly patrolling an invisible patch of water, your brain, which is still the size of a walnut, fixated on the single, monotonous thought. This is my water. All of this is my water. The problem is, every other male Megalodon has the exact same thought about the exact same patch of water. So your life becomes a series of pointless, brutal confrontations. Two living mountains of muscle and egos smashing into each other, tearing off huge chunks of flesh, all to decide who gets to rule a featureless expanse of salt water for a little while longer. It is a lifetime of pointless border disputes with opponents who are just as big, dumb, and arrogant as you are. Your grand prize for winning the evolutionary arms race is an eternity of mind-numbing guard duty and terrible, life-threatening dates. It sucks. And so the decades grind on. The glorious peak of your power slowly, imperceptibly, begins to erode. The decline is not a dramatic event. It is a slow, undignified fading. A quiet, creeping obsolescence. Your teeth, the legendary instruments of your reign, the ones you have replaced in their thousands, now grow in just a little bit duller. The serrated edges are not quite as sharp. Your eyesight, never particularly good, becomes a little cloudier. Your sense of smell, that miraculous instrument that could detect a single drop of blood from miles away, becomes less acute. Your attacks, once lightning-fast ambushes of shocking violence, are now a fraction of a second slower. And in the ocean, a fraction of a second is the difference between a full stomach and a fatal wound. You start to lose hunts. A young whale, the kind you would have dispatched with contemptuous ease in your prime, now manages to evade your first strike. It escapes, leaving you with a mouthful of empty water and a deep, aching gash along your flank from its desperate tail fluke. The wound festers. It heals slowly, a constant, nagging reminder of your own encroaching failure. The gnawing, colossal hunger that has defined every moment of your existence returns with a vengeance. But now, your body is no longer capable of satisfying it. You are a fading tyrant, a king in exile within your own skin, haunted by the ghost of your former power. You become cautious, hesitant, and in your world, hesitation is a death sentence. Your final confrontation is not with some mythical kraken or a rival sea monster worthy of your legend. It is something far more humiliating. It is with a younger, stronger, faster version of yourself. A 45-foot upstart, radiating the arrogant, brutal confidence that you yourself possessed so long ago. He sees you not as a venerable king to be respected, but as a slow-moving obstacle. He sees you as territory to be claimed, and perhaps, if you put up a poor enough fight, as a meal. You see him coming, a dark shape in the hazy blue, and every instinct in your ancient, weary body screams at you to flee. But you can't. Your walnut-sized brain is trapped in the cage of your own pride, the memory of what you once were. So you turn to face him. You rear up, opening your vast jaws in a threat display that once would have sent Leviathan scattering in terror. The young buck is unimpressed. He just sees a tired old man showing off his dentures. The fight, when it comes, is pathetic. It is not the clash of titans that future apes will imagine in their lurid films. It is a short, sad, one-sided beating. He is faster. He is stronger. He evades your clumsy, telegraphed lunge and sinks his own perfect, razor-sharp teeth into your flank, just behind the gills. The pain is immense, a white-hot agony that eclipses everything else. But worse than the pain is the shock. The sheer, uncomprehending indignity of it. He tears away 100-pound slab of your flesh and circles back, his cold, black eyes devoid of anything but predatory calculus. Your power is a memory. Your fury is a shadow. You are no longer the hunter. You are just meat. Your end is the ultimate punchline to the long, cruel joke of your life. Your massive body, deprived of its kingly authority, gives up. The last vestiges of your strength flee, and you begin the long, slow, silent descent into the abyssal darkness. The pressure builds, a final, crushing embrace from the ocean you once ruled. You are not afforded a quiet, dignified death. As you sink, the scavengers arrive. Creatures you would not have even deigned to notice in your prime now flock to your falling carcass like pilgrims to a shrine. Hagfish, sleeper sharks, giant isopods. They swarm over you, burrowing into your flesh, feasting on the ruins of your empire. You, the greatest predator the world has ever known, are not laid to rest in a kingly tomb. You are a buffet, a banquet for the bottom feeders. Your final, grand purpose is to be recycled. And as the last flicker of your consciousness is extinguished by the immense, cold pressure of the deep as your 60-foot frame settles into the eternal, silent ooze of the ocean floor, something else is happening. Far above, in the sun-dappled, life-giving waters of the surface, a new you is born. It is ejected into the world just as hungry, just as vulnerable, just as doomed as you were. It takes its first gulp of salt water, eats its first sibling, and begins the exact same miserable, pointless journey that you have just so tragically completed. The cycle resets. The joke begins again. So, why did it suck to be you? Because your entire existence was a brutal, zero-sum game that you were guaranteed to lose, either in the first 5 minutes or after a long, pointless career as a tyrant. Your life was a tragedy written by nature, a biological masterpiece of suffering. So, that's your life. A short, brutal, and ultimately meaningless cycle, repeated ad nauseam. You'd think that would be enough tragedy for one creature. You'd think being erased by a planetary cooling trend and the starvation that followed was a decent enough punchline. But you were special. You were so spectacularly terrifying that you managed to become a victim of a species you never even met. You left behind clues, and that's when your personal, biological tragedy became a historical catastrophe. You were about to get a posthumous promotion to monster, myth, and merchandise. Your second life, your silent legacy, began when one of them found your tooth. Imagine the scene. A small, fur-clad primate, whose primary concerns are finding edible roots and not being eaten by a saber-toothed cat, is walking along a beach. His world is made of wood, stone, bone, and fear. And then he sees it a triangular shard of glossy, black stone, half buried in the sand, bigger than his hand. What is this? He has no frame of reference for you. He has never seen a shark, let alone a shark that could swallow his entire family without slowing down. The concept of extinction is millions of years beyond his grasp. So his tiny, imaginative brain does what it does best. It panics and makes things up. Is this a fallen star? A sliver of the night sky given form? Is it the claw of some unimaginable subterranean beast that carved the mountains? Or the arrowhead of a vengeful sky god who hunts his people from the clouds? His reaction is a potent, intoxicating cocktail of pure, unadulterated terror and superstitious awe. He picks you up. The tooth, your tooth, is heavy, solid, and unnaturally sharp. It feels like power. It feels like magic. In that moment, you, a creature that has been dead for 3 million years, are instantly and unceremoniously promoted. You are no longer a fossil. You are a god, or a monster, or both. The line was always a bit blurry for them. And so your entire identity, your magnificent, brutal reality, is overwritten, defined by the frantic, fearful superstitions of a clever ape who was, at that moment, probably worried about being eaten by a large badger. Being worshipped sounds like a pretty good deal, but you'll soon find that the benefits package is terrible. Your new divine status translates into reality in the most disappointingly practical way. Being a sacred object, a fragment of a god, doesn't stop them from trying to figure out how to use you. After all, what good is a god that doesn't do anything useful? They quickly discover that your serrated edge, designed by millions of years of evolution to shear through the cartilage of primitive whales, is also exceptionally good at scraping hair off an animal hide. The irony is so thick it could choke a leviathan. Your tooth, the apex of predatory evolution, a weapon that represents the absolute pinnacle of oceanic power, is now being used as a glorified vegetable peeler by a creature that has only just figured out how to not set its own hair on fire. A shaman might hold you aloft during a ritual, chanting to the great serpent of the sea whose tongue you supposedly are, and then, an hour later, use you to punch a new hole in his leather belt. You are worshipped and exploited in the same breath. Your divinity is purely utilitarian. You're not a god to be obeyed. You're a divine multi-tool. And it gets worse. Because they found your teeth scattered on land, washed ashore by storms, unearthed by rivers, they didn't necessarily conclude that you were a creature of the sea. Or at least, not only of the sea. To them, you were a dragon, a serpent, a creature that could traverse both land and water. You became the reason for their fear of the unknown. You were the thing lurking just beyond the edge of the firelight. You were the monster in their first stories, the nameless horror they used to frighten their children into obedience. As they built their first pathetic settlements, a collection of mud huts huddled together for warmth and imagined safety, you became a convenient villain. Did a storm wreck their flimsy fishing raft? It was the great serpent's anger. Did a child wander too close to the dark woods and disappear? The dragon took him. You, long dead and buried, became the scapegoat for their every failure, for every tragedy they couldn't explain. You were declared a villain for simply having existed in a world that was yours long before their ancestors had even decided to try walking on two legs. This was the first chapter of your tragic relationship with humanity. They found the evidence of your power, failed to understand it, and turned you into a ghost story to scare themselves with. Being worshipped, it turns out, was just a prelude to being profoundly, comically, and permanently misunderstood. Let's fast forward a few thousand years. Humanity has gotten considerably better at organized violence, elaborate hats, and telling each other what to believe. They have built empires, invented bureaucracy, and perfected the art of making life miserable for each other on a grand scale. And in this new, more structured world of commerce and religion, their perception of you changed again. You were demoted. You were no longer a god. That role had been filled by newer, more abstract deities who were unfortunately much better at marketing. Instead, you became a curiosity, a product, a piece of occult paraphernalia. Scholars and naturalists of the Renaissance, in their infinite wisdom, examined your teeth and gave them a new name, glossopetrae, or tongue stones. They were convinced you were the fossilized tongues of giant serpents or, even better, dragons. You went from being a terrifying, divine entity to a geological oddity, a weird rock that a wealthy nobleman could display in his cabinet of curiosities next to a shrunken head and a coconut. It was a significant step down the ladder of existential importance. Your new job was, if possible, even more humiliating than your last one. Your usefulness was no longer in scraping hides or inspiring terror, but in catering to the rampant paranoia of the rich and powerful. In this age of intrigue, where a sip of the wrong wine could lead to a very unpleasant afternoon of convulsions and death, they came to believe that your tongue stones had a very special property. They could detect poison. The belief was that a dragon's tongue, when dipped into a poison chalice, would sweat or change color, alerting the drinker to the treachery. So imagine this. You, Carcarocle's Megalodon, the creature whose bite could cripple a whale, the undisputed tyrant of the prehistoric seas. Your tooth, a marvel of biological engineering, is now dangling from a silver chain, being nervously dipped into a goblet of wine by a paranoid duke who thinks his second cousin is trying to kill him for his landholdings. You have been transformed from a force of nature into a piece of medieval security equipment. Your entire existence, your millions of years of evolutionary supremacy, has been reduced to serving as a glorified poison detection strip for the feudal elite. You are no longer even a myth. You are an entry in a ledger book, a luxury good whose market value fluctuates based on the current political climate and the general level of backstabbing at court. Then, a flicker of what they would call progress in the 17th century, a Danish naturalist named Nicolaus Steno had a revolutionary idea. He was dissecting the head of a modern great white shark, and he noticed something. The teeth looked familiar. He compared them to the tongue stones that were so popular among the nobility, and the connection was undeniable. He published his findings, correctly identifying the glossovitrae as the fossilized teeth of a giant, ancient shark. A monumental breakthrough for the nascent field of paleontology. A complete and utter disaster for your living relatives. Once they had scientific confirmation that a creature like you had once existed, the ocean became an infinitely more terrifying place in their imagination. You were the proof. The hard evidence that the sea could produce monsters of unimaginable size and ferocity. This discovery didn't inspire awe or a newfound respect for the raw power of nature. Oh no. It fueled their fear, their hatred, and their persecution of all sharks, particularly your smallest, most modest cousin, the great white. Every sailor's tall tale, every fisherman's exaggerated story, now had a fossil record to back it up. You became the ancient ghost that justified a modern slaughter. The irony is just exquisite. The very moment they began to understand what you truly were was the exact moment they began a systematic war against what was left of your family. Their enlightenment was a death sentence for sharks. And now we arrive in the modern world. The age of industry, science, and weapons that for the first time could have actually given you a bad day. Humanity has conquered the planet, paved over the wilderness, and filled the oceans with plastic and noise. And their definition of you has fractured into a dozen new, equally absurd categories. To the paleontologist, you are Carcharocles Megalodon, a fascinating data point. You are a collection of fossilized vertebrae and teeth from which they can extrapolate your size, your diet, your preferred water temperature. You are the subject of dry, academic papers with thrilling titles like Isotopic Analysis of Enameloid-Bound Nitrogen in the Teeth of Carcharocles Megalodon. To them, you are a puzzle to be solved, a ghost to be measured. But to everyone else, you are a brand. You are a business. You have been resurrected, not in the flesh, but in the far more profitable realm of intellectual property. You are the star of blockbuster summer movies, a reliable, bankable monster who can be counted on to menace a group of attractive but profoundly stupid characters on a doomed oil rig or a futuristic research station. You are the looming, toothy grin on the poster, the guaranteed ratings booster for Shark Week, the perpetually resurrected villain in a series of cheap paperback novels written by authors who have clearly never been near an ocean. Your new identity is that of a problem to be solved, usually with an explosion. You have been meticulously redefined as a simple, two-dimensional antagonist for a square-jawed hero to overcome. Your complexity, your majesty, your entire biological reality has been sanded down and streamlined to fit into a 90-minute action movie. You are no longer an animal. You are a plot device. Your final, posthumous job in this modern circus is your most bizarre and cynical yet: to inspire a profitable fusion of manufactured guilt and deliberate misinformation. What is your new usefulness? It is to be the star of 1,000 grainy, low-budget documentaries on second-rate cable channels, all breathlessly asking the same stupid question. Could the Megalodon still be alive? They send teams with night vision cameras to the Marianas Trench, knowing perfectly well that you are a warm-water, shallow-sea predator who would have been crushed into paste by the pressure of the deep sea. But the truth doesn't generate clicks. The truth doesn't sell ad time during a commercial break. So you are hunted, not by fishermen, but by television producers, your ghost dragged from the depths to frighten a gullible public for profit. Simultaneously, you serve an opposite, and even more hypocritical purpose. You are now a symbol of loss. In real, legitimate documentaries about ocean conservation, your majestic CGI form will swim across the screen in a sad, sweeping montage. The narrator will speak in hushed, mournful tones about the giants we have lost, about the world's vanished wonders. And the audience will feel a pang of selective, sentimental guilt for a creature they are secretly very, very glad is extinct. They will mourn your absence for 2 minutes, and then go back to supporting the industries and lifestyles that are actively destroying the oceans and driving your few remaining, less spectacular cousins towards the exact same fate. You are the perfect extinct animal to feel sad about, because mourning you requires absolutely no change in their behavior. It is the ultimate form of feel-good, do-nothing environmentalism. The collateral damage of this new fame is what we can call the prison of popularity. You, in your absurd movie monster glory, have set an impossible standard. You have ruined it for everyone else. Your celebrity is a cage for your descendants. Why would anyone get excited about protecting a 10-foot mako shark when they've seen a 75-foot CGI version of you bite a nuclear submarine in half? Real, living sharks have become boring by comparison. They are a disappointment. A child at an aquarium will stare at a magnificent, living great white, the apex predator of the modern ocean, and feel a sense of anticlimax because it's not as big as the shark from the movie. The tourists flock to natural history museums to take selfies in front of your reconstructed jaw, a massive, terrifying arc of fossilized death. They stare in slack-jawed wonder at your power, at your sheer scale. They buy a plastic replica of your tooth in the gift shop. Then they get in their cars, drive home, and vote for politicians who advocate for offshore drilling, who deregulate industrial fishing, who deny the climate change that is acidifying the oceans and bleaching the coral reefs that form the very foundation of the ecosystem you once commanded. They look upon the evidence of your existence and learn nothing from it. You are a spectacle, a piece of ancient history as disconnected from their current reality as a dinosaur or a triceratops. You are a living museum exhibit, a cautionary tale whose caution they cheerfully ignore. The conservation movement built around protecting the oceans has to constantly compete with the sensational, fictional version of you that humanity finds so much more entertaining. Your fame doesn't help your family. It actively hurts them by making their plight seem small and insignificant in comparison to your Hollywood-inflated ghost. And so we arrive at the grand finale, the ultimate, most profound, and most pathetic irony of your long and storied relationship with humanity. Here is the final, cynical truth. After ignoring you, misidentifying you, fearing you, worshiping you, using you as a tool, turning you into a poison detector, and then resurrecting you as a movie star, they have finally perfected their relationship with you. You are the ultimate safe monster. You are a threat that is not threatening. You are a source of terror that is entirely under their control. They can thrill to your power, shudder at your imagined ferocity, and then turn off the television. They can endlessly exploit your image for entertainment, for profit, for shoddy science and superficial sentimentality, precisely because you are not here to object. You cannot sue for defamation. You cannot demand royalties. You cannot rise from the depths and swallow a studio executive, however much he might deserve it. They took the greatest and most terrible predator the world has ever known, a creature that for millions of years represented the absolute, sovereign power of the natural world, and they did what they do to everything they fear and cannot control. They neutered you. They commodified you. They turned you into cheap, easy, predictable content. Your final, tragic legacy is not that you went extinct. It is that your ghost was captured, domesticated, and forced to get a job in show business. And the pay is terrible. You get no residuals, and you have to work with has-been actors. It is, by any measure, a truly miserable and undignified end. You deserved better. Or maybe, after a lifetime of mindless oceanic tyranny, you didn't. The universe, in its infinite, cynical wisdom, doesn't seem to care either way. This entire human chapter of your story is a testament to their unique talent for missing the point. They look at your tooth and see a monster, a myth, a movie. They never see the truth. They never see the magnificent, brutal, and ultimately tragic animal that you actually were. They never understand that your story is not about a monster. It is about the cost of power, the inevitability of decline, and the cold, indifferent mathematics of nature. Your true legacy is a warning written in bone and stone that they have consistently failed to read. They marvel at your size, but they don't comprehend the metabolic furnace it required, the continent-sized hunting grounds you needed to survive. They thrill at your power, But they don't consider the fragility of the ecosystem that supported you, the delicate chain of life that, once broken, led to your starvation and demise. They see your extinction as a single, dramatic event from the distant past, not as a slow, grinding process of environmental change that is eerily similar to the one they are currently engineering. They look at you and see a monster from another world, because it absolves them of the responsibility of seeing the monster in themselves. Your story is their story, written on a grander, more honest scale. Your rise to the top through sheer, voracious consumption. Your reign as an apex predator, shaping the entire world around your needs. And your inevitable decline when the world changed and you could not. You are their own reflection, seen in a dark, prehistoric mirror. But they refuse to look. It is far easier, and far more profitable, to sell tickets to a creature feature than to heed a warning. And what of your descendants? The sharks that survived the Great Cooling, the ones who inherited your diminished kingdom. They are haunted by your ghost. They are measured against your impossible scale and found wanting. They are persecuted for the fear your memory inspires. They are slaughtered by the tens of millions every year. Their fins sliced off for soup, their bodies discarded, their populations plummeting towards an extinction that will be far less dramatic than yours, but infinitely more squalid and pathetic. They will not be undone by a global ice age. They will be undone by long lines, bycatch, and human indifference. Their legacy will be a footnote in the story of your family's destruction. So that is the final bitter pill. Your posthumous celebrity does not even serve to protect the last remnants of your lineage. It only serves to distract from their quiet, ongoing annihilation. Humanity will weep for the long-dead Megalodon on their television screens, while the oceans are emptied of the very real sharks that still swim there. It is a level of hypocrisy so profound, so perfectly crafted, that it almost commands a kind of respect. They have managed to turn their admiration for you into yet another weapon to be used against your kind. In the end, what are you to them? You are a fossil, a story, a special effect. You are a safe way to experience awe without the inconvenience of true wonder. You are a convenient way to feel fear without the unpleasantness of actual danger. You are a disposable icon, a temporary thrill, a ghost they can summon and dismiss at their leisure. They took your magnificent, terrible reality and ground it down into dust. And from that dust they have built a theme park of cheap scares and easy sentiment. And the price of admission is the future of the ocean you once ruled. Your biological tragedy was a private affair, a grand opera of hunger and violence played out on an empty stage. It was honest. It was pure. Your historical tragedy is a public farce, a low-budget horror movie played on an endless loop. It is a story of ignorance, arrogance, and the unique human capacity to take something vast and terrifying and make it small and silly and ultimately sad. Between the two, it is difficult to say which is the greater catastrophe. One was the end of your life. The other is the endless, humiliating desecration of your memory. And it seems that for you, Carcarocle's Megalodon, the misery doesn't end just because you're dead. Let's return to that first primate, the one on the beach holding your tooth. He looks at it, and the gears in his developing mind turn. He doesn't see a tooth. He sees a tool. He sees a weapon. He sees an advantage. That is the moment your legacy was sealed. Not as an animal, but as a resource. And that is all you have ever been to them since. A resource for their myths. A resource for their paranoia. A resource for their science. And now, a resource for their entertainment. Your entire magnificent existence, a biological epic written over millions of years, has been condensed into a single, ignoble human word: useful. They will study you, yes. They will reconstruct your skeleton and hang it in their grandest museums. They will write books and papers, endlessly debating your exact length, your hunting strategies, your thermal physiology. They will celebrate their own cleverness in uncovering your secrets. But they will never truly know you. Because to know you would be to understand the world that made you, and the world that unmade you. And to understand that would be to understand that they are now the Megalodon. They are the apex predator, consuming everything, growing unsustainably, convinced of their own permanence, all while the environment that supports them is slowly, inexorably changing around them. And they are writing their own final chapter, and it ends with the same cold, indifferent punchline as yours. Starvation in a world of their own making. But that is a horror story they are not yet ready to watch. Yours is much more fun. So, let's linger on your peak for a moment longer. That brief, glorious, and deeply unpleasant period when you were king. Imagine the sheer physicality of your existence. Every moment is a struggle against the crushing weight of your own body. Your skeleton, made of cartilage, is barely able to support your 50 tons of muscle. On land, you would be in a mobile, suffocating heap. The water is your prison and your liberation, the only thing that holds you together. Your heart is a monstrous pump, the size of a small car, beating a slow, powerful rhythm to push blood through miles of vascular tissue. Your metabolism is a raging furnace that demands constant fuel. The hunger is never gone. It is the baseline of your consciousness. Even with a full stomach, with the remains of a 10-ton whale digesting in your gut, a part of your brain is already calculating the next meal. You are a slave to your own size. An empire that is perpetually on the verge of collapse, sustained only by constant, violent expansion. There is no joy in this. No thrill of the hunt as the apes would imagine it. There is only the grim, mechanical satisfaction of a need being met. You feel the bioelectric field of a large animal. You identify its rhythm, its size. You calculate the intercept vector. You attack. You kill. You eat. You move on. It is a job. A brutal, repetitive, and utterly necessary job that you must perform every few days for your entire adult life. There are no holidays. There are no sick days. There is only the relentless, grinding pressure to find the next 10 million calories before your own body begins to consume itself. And what of your senses? You navigate a world of pressure waves, of smells, of faint electrical fields. Your vision is secondary, almost an afterthought. You see in murky shades of gray and blue. The world is a place of shapes and shadows, not of vibrant color. Your reality is constructed from feelings that humans can barely comprehend. You feel the frantic, panicked vibrations of a struggling seal from a mile away. You taste the chemical trail of a wounded cetacean long after it has passed. You sense the minute electrical discharge of a ray's muscles as it hides buried in the sand beneath you. You are a creature of profound sensory depth, and yet all of this magnificent biological equipment is dedicated to a single, crude purpose. Find thing, kill thing, eat thing. You are a paradox, a creature of exquisite evolutionary design, and yet utterly devoid of complexity. You are a finely tuned instrument that can only play one note, and that note is death. For millions of years, this was a successful strategy. The oceans were stable, teeming with the large, slow-moving, high-fat prey you needed to survive. The world was your banquet hall. But you were over-specialized. You were a magnificently designed hammer in a world that was about to be filled with screws. When the climate changed, when the ice ages began, and the sea levels dropped, your world fell apart. The great baleen whales, your primary food source, either went extinct or adapted, moving into the colder, nutrient-rich polar waters where you, a creature of the warm shallows, could not follow. Your banquet hall closed for business. And you, the greatest predator that ever lived, were left to starve in an empty room. Your size, once your greatest asset, became your fatal flaw. Your magnificent hunger, the engine of your success, became the instrument of your extinction. The king died alone, dethroned not by a greater predator, but by a change in the weather. It is the most mundane and yet most terrifying of endings. So when a human looks at your jaw in a museum, they see a monster. They should see a tragedy. They see a testament to nature's power. They should see a cautionary tale about the dangers of overspecialization. They see a simple, terrifying killer. They should see a creature that was so perfectly adapted to a world that no longer exists, that it was utterly incapable of surviving in a new one. Your story is not a monster movie. It is a quiet, geological horror story about climate change and starvation. But quiet horror doesn't sell popcorn, and so they choose the version of the story they prefer. The one with more screaming and less science. This preference for sensational fiction over complex reality is the defining feature of your relationship with them. They have never been interested in you. They have always been interested in their idea of you. An idea they can shape, control, and sell. Think about the sheer audacity of it. They take your fossilized tooth, the only true and honest record of your existence, and they use it as the foundation for a mountain of lies. They invent a creature that is twice your actual size. They place you in the deep sea, an environment you never inhabited. They grant you a malevolent intelligence, a vengeful personality that you, a creature with the emotional range of a freight train, never possessed. They build an entire mythology around you, and with each telling, the story gets taller, the teeth get sharper, and the truth gets buried a little deeper. Why? Because the truth is boring. The truth is complicated. The truth doesn't have a hero who can punch you in the face. The truth doesn't have a plucky female scientist who discovers your one weakness. The truth doesn't have a satisfying third-act explosion. The truth just has a very large, very hungry shark slowly starving to death as the world changes around it. And there is no market for that. So they have to invent a monster. Because monsters can be fought. Monsters can be defeated. Monsters make them feel strong. An animal that goes extinct because of climate change, that just makes them feel uncomfortable. It hits a little too close to home. It suggests that perhaps their own reign as apex predators is not as permanent as they would like to believe. It suggests that their own global dominance is just as fragile as yours was. And so you are conscripted into service as their bogeyman. You are the distraction. You are the big, scary shark that stops them from having to think about the real, invisible, and far more terrifying monsters they are creating themselves. Ocean acidification, coral bleaching, plastic pollution, overfishing. They can all go and watch a movie about a brave hero killing a fictional Megalodon, and for 2 hours, they can feel like they are winning. It is a form of mass delusion, a global therapy session where you play the role of the symbolic evil that can be easily vanquished. Your legacy is to be their shield against reality. You are the ultimate what if, a question so big and exciting that it drowns out the smaller, more important, and far more urgent questions about their own impact on the planet. Will the Greenland ice sheet collapse? Will the Gulf Stream shut down? Will we face mass extinction within a century? These are difficult, terrifying questions. What if the Megalodon was still alive? Is a much easier and, frankly, more entertaining one to ponder. So you serve your final, most important purpose. You are not just a brand. You are not just a plot device. You are a sedative. You are a magnificent, 60-foot-long red herring, distracting the apes from their own impending doom. And they pay good money for the privilege of being distracted. They line up in droves to see your ghost perform its tricks, to watch you roar and rampage across the screen, a sound you could never have made, a fury you could never have felt. They have taken your silent, powerful, and tragic reality and replaced it with a loud, stupid, and profitable fantasy. And perhaps that is the greatest trick the clever ape ever pulled. Not learning how to make fire, not inventing the wheel, but learning how to take the terrifying truth of nature and rewrite it into a story where they are always the heroes, and you are always the monster. And the story always has a happy ending. For them, at least. Let's zoom in on that moment of scientific discovery again. Steno, in the 17th century, looking from a modern shark's tooth to your fossilized one. For him, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated intellectual triumph. The thrill of connection, of solving a puzzle that had baffled humanity for centuries. He had, with the power of observation and reason, slain a dragon and revealed it to be a shark. He must have felt like a giant. But from your perspective, this moment of enlightenment was just another form of desecration. It was the moment you were officially dragged from the realm of myth and strapped to the sterile table of science. You were no longer the great serpent, the earth shaker, the divine mystery. You were now a specimen. A thing to be measured, cataloged, classified, and given a boring Latin name. You were annexed by their taxonomy, conquered by their Linnaean system. This process stripped you of your power. A monster that is understood is a monster that is diminished. Your terror was rooted in the unknown. Once they knew what you were, just a very big version of a fish they were already killing with enthusiastic regularity, you became less frightening and more of a challenge. You were no longer a supernatural horror. You were a problem of engineering. How big of a boat would you need? How thick of a harpoon? Your ghost became the ultimate trophy for their imaginary hunting lodge. And this scientific framing created a new, peculiar kind of collateral damage. It gave birth to generations of cryptozoologists, the pseudo-scientific ghost hunters who would become your most loyal and most irritating fans. These are the people who refuse to accept your extinction. To them, the scientific consensus is not a conclusion based on evidence. It is a conspiracy, a cover-up. They believe you are still out there, lurking in the deep, cleverly evading the global network of satellites, submarines, and sonar that blankets the modern ocean. Your memory has been hijacked by their desire to believe in a world more interesting than the one they actually live in. They want to believe that the world still holds mysteries, that there are still dragons hiding just off the edge of the map. And you are their dragon. You are their Bigfoot of the sea, their aquatic Loch Ness monster. They trade grainy, faked photographs. They pore over sonar blips that are probably schools of tuna or geological formations. They write breathless, unreadable books filled with exclamation points and wild speculation. You, a creature of pure, brutal efficiency, have become the patron saint of wishful thinking. Your legacy is to be the great hope for people who want to believe that science hasn't explained everything away. It is a deeply ironic fate for an animal that was so thoroughly, punishingly real. You have been adopted by the very people who reject the scientific methods that were required to understand you in the first place. You exist in a quantum state of being both a triumph of paleontology and the poster child for pseudoscience. And in this modern age, that is where you remain. Trapped between the museum and the monster movie. Between the academic journal and the conspiracy theory website. You are pulled apart, your legacy carved up to serve the needs of a dozen different human tribes, none of whom are interested in the animal you actually were. They have taken your story, a simple, elegant tragedy of biology and time, and they have turned it into a loud, sprawling, and idiotic soap opera. A soap opera in which you are the silent, long-suffering star, unable to fire your agent or demand a rewrite. You are simply forced to endure the endless, humiliating spectacle of your own afterlife. Your punishment for being the biggest is to be the subject of humanity's smallest, most selfish stories forever. Let us consider, for a moment, the sheer injustice of it all. You existed for over 20 million years. 20 million years. You survived shifting climates, evolving prey, and the constant, grinding pressure of your own biology. You were a masterpiece of survival, a dynasty that reigned over the oceans for an epoch that makes the entirety of human history look like a fleeting commercial break. Humanity, in its current form, has been around for maybe 300,000 years. And in the tiny fraction of that time, since they figured out what you were, they have managed to so thoroughly rewrite your story that the truth is now just an interesting footnote. They have usurped your legacy with an efficiency that would have made your hunting style look sloppy. Your name, Megalodon, is now more associated with bad movies than with the prehistoric world. It is a brand name for a fictional monster. They have committed the ultimate act of identity theft, and they have stolen it from a creature that cannot even file a police report. They have built an entertainment empire on your stolen bones. And the final insult, the last twist of the knife, is that they do all of this while congratulating themselves on their own intelligence. They celebrate their ability to reconstruct your past, to understand your world, all while they actively ignore the most important lesson your story has to teach them, that no reign is permanent, that no apex predator is immune to the consequences of environmental change. They look at your extinction as a closed case, a story from the past. They fail to see that it is also a prophecy they are doing their absolute best to fulfill. The same forces that undid you are at play once again. A changing climate. Shifting food chains. a world being pushed out of balance. But this time, it is not a natural cycle of ice ages. It is them. They are the asteroid. They are the climate change. And they are driving countless species towards the same fate you suffered, only faster and with a lot more industrial waste. But they will not see it. They are too busy watching the movie. Too busy being entertained by the ghost. Your ghost. The big, dumb, scary monster that makes them forget, for a little while, that the real monster is them. They have turned your tragedy into their theme park, a place they can visit for a cheap thrill before returning to the business of burning their own world down. So, here you are. 60 feet of prehistoric perfection, reduced to a caricature. A king reduced to a clown. A force of nature reduced to a special effect. You were born into a world of violence and hunger. You lived a life of brutal, relentless struggle. You died because the world changed and you could not. And then, millions of years later, you suffered the final, greatest indignity of all. You were discovered by humanity. And they, in their infinite, terrible wisdom, decided that your story would be much better if it had more explosions. The end. Or, as they would say in the movies you now so unwillingly star in, Finn. But the story doesn't really end there, does it? Because the machine they built on your bones is self-perpetuating. The movies will get sequels. The documentaries will get re-edited with new, even more outlandish theories. The children who buy your plastic tooth today will grow up and show the same movies to their children. Your role as the reliable, go-to monster is secure for generations to come. Your memory has become a cultural commodity, as tangible, and as traded as oil or corn. There are Megalodon-themed roller coasters. Megalodon video games. You can buy Megalodon-shaped gummy candies, which is a particularly bizarre form of posthumous cannibalism. You have been fully integrated into the human economy of distraction. Imagine if you could see it. If some fragment of your consciousness could witness what they have done with your name. You, a creature of silent, crushing depths, would see yourself roaring on a giant screen, a sound your cartilaginous larynx could never have produced. You, a creature that likely had a simple, counter-shaded gray and white coloration, would see yourself rendered in glistening, monstrous blacks and adorned with non-existent dorsal spikes for added dramatic flair. You would see your teeth, once the most efficient instruments of predation in the planet's history, now adorning the t-shirts of spotty teenagers. You would see your majestic form reduced to a poorly animated GIF, endlessly looping on the internet. It would be a vision of pure, baffling horror. A madness beyond even the frantic, cannibalistic chaos of your own birth. And through it all, the real you gets buried deeper and deeper. The magnificent animal, the product of 20 million years of relentless evolutionary pressure, vanishes. It is replaced by the simulacrum, the copy, the cheap and convenient monster they prefer. They have killed you twice. First with an ice age, and the second time with a marketing plan. It is hard to say which extinction was more total. The most tragic part is that you could have been their greatest teacher. You were the ultimate lesson in the fragility of dominance. Your story was a perfect parable for the age they now inhabit. A story about a creature that became so big, so powerful, and so specialized that it could not survive the slightest change in the system that supported it. It is their story. They are you now. They are the creature whose voracious appetite is changing the climate of the entire planet. They are the ones whose dominance is built on a fragile system they do not fully understand. Your ghost should haunt their every waking moment, not as a monster, but as a mirror. But they don't want a mirror, they want a movie screen. They don't want a lesson. They want to be entertained. And so you are forced to play the part, not of the teacher, but of the court jester. The big, scary clown who can be brought out to distract the children whenever they get restless. And as the world outside the circus tent gets hotter, and the oceans get sicker, the clowns will only get louder and more distracting. That is your final, eternal service to the clever ape that inherited the earth. You are their lullaby at the end of the world.